So if I'm driving from Opelika, I'll give you one. Oh, you're talking about the one. I forgot what I was literally like go to the restaurant. Oh, why did you say that? Yeah, that's why didn't
like size
Oh, darn. Yeah.
How can I make my nose bleed more? Oh my god. Just like swirl it around and then it starts gushing out.
Like does it make you tired? Nope. Okay, you're lucky there. It kind of makes me tired. But they say what's different about Zyrtec is more fast acting than some of the other ones.
I low-key forgot about it.
Yeah, it's a startup.
Oh, sweet.
It's fake, bro.
Yeah, this looks
Nothing died.
What do you do with?
Just creates 3D relevant.
You're right.
Essentially, they make their own cells.
Oh my goodness. Okay, y'all, let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to just say a couple of things. Always feel free to ask me questions, email or in the classroom. I've had 2 questions come in about some of these research techniques we talked about. So I appreciate the questions and I'm happy to help clarify them. And so I wanted to mention, in this discussion about consumer behavior, research methods, and how we understand consumers, I wanted to clarify a little bit of the differences between quantitative and qualitative research. So for one, with quantitative research, the goal essentially, the primary focus of quantitative research is you're measuring some phenomenon and then you're quantifying it. And so the goal oftentimes is to, with these large data sets, look at, are there patterns in the data? Are there differences among respondents? So these people do this, these people do that. Are there relationships? Is this associated with that? Okay, and the goal is ultimately, again, to make an inference based on the broader population. So using the data that you have or the sample that you have, can we make some generalization statements to our broader population, which largely is often your target market? So anyhow, let me see here. So ultimately, you're doing some sort of numerical analysis with this large data set to identify these relationships or differences or patterns in the data. And so the tools used in terms of quantitative tools could be surveys like we talked about. It could be looking at data you scrape from the web, like looking at click patterns or any sort of behavioral data from looking at a website. It could be from experiments. So one of the King's Hawaiian groups talked about looking at shopper behavior based on store design. So considering how many patrons are in the analysis, the manipulations of the store design, again, you're in this case measuring customer behavior. The focus is on quantitative measurement, in this case maybe sales or number of items purchased or things of that sort. So anyhow, the focus again though, overall, the theme is measurement to identify patterns or differences, relationships in the data set, to quantify. Okay. And so always think, I have analyzing transactions, clicks, all of those things. So think large data sets. Now, qualitative is different. Qualitative isn't necessarily meant to quantify. So with qualitative research, the goal really is to get a more in-depth understanding of some phenomenon. And so by in-depth understanding of something, it's usually something you can't measure, or it's very difficult to measure using those quantitative techniques I talked about. So qualitative research oftentimes focuses on understanding customer perceptions of something, customer feelings, customer motivations, those more subjective elements that are sometimes difficult to quantify. And usually you engage in these more qualitative techniques when you don't know how people are going to respond. Okay. So They focus more on understanding things that are difficult to measure. And some of the examples of techniques that are qualitative are depth interviews, those one-on-one conversations we talked about often that span 45 to 60 minutes. So depth interviews, focus groups, some of those projective techniques we talked about. It could be some participant observation studies too, you know, whether we're observing how people are making collages or photo sorts, or even observing how they shop. Like we talked about with mystery shoppers, if you're not having a large data set there, it's those observational techniques can be considered qualitative. So oftentimes marketers use both methods because they have different benefits and they can complement each other. So for example, you might first start out with a qualitative technique, such as a focus group, to uncover consumers' perceptions of your brand or their feelings towards a particular product or their service experience. And then after that focus group, which unveils those common themes, you create a survey and you send that out to a larger sample and asking people, to what extent do you feel this? Or what extent do you think of the brand like this? And so then you can make better generalizations about your target market. So they can complement each other in that way. Another example could be the opposite. Maybe you notice some trend that, okay, online people are, you know, clicking on this and then clicking on this. Or maybe they're having certain items in their shopping cart, but then they abandon their cart or they eliminate certain items, right? And you see large trends in your data set here, and you don't know why this is happening. So you might then take your quantitative results, follow it up with a qualitative study to uncover some of the motivations behind the behavior you've identified with the quantitative study. And so you have those rich conversations in those qualitative methods to help give some context to the behavior you're seeing in the quantitative study. And also, you know, even like I talked about with the observation techniques, like the machine observation techniques when we talked about facial coding and whatnot. There's techniques out there that says, okay, we see brain regions are activated, or we see that, you know, these facial expressions are indicated, but sometimes that's not enough information for the marketer to act upon. Like some of these studies won't, or these techniques won't tell us what type of emotion is activated, like the Valganic skin response. It could be fear, it could be excitement, arousal, so it could be positive and negative. So sometimes you'll see that such methodologies like these will be paired with another methodology to get more information on the participant's actual state. Okay, so they're very complementary, and you can oftentimes use them in combination with each other. Okay, last time we met, we talked really briefly about competitive advantage. And again, I really tried to streamline this because I know that you've talked about this in your other courses. And we've also talked about some of these concepts already in the earlier chapters. But ultimately what I want to say here is that the SWOT analysis, looking at these strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats, it's just a foundational tool that can connect internal strengths or weaknesses of that sort to external market conditions. Ideally, you're linking internal strengths to external opportunities to identify areas of growth for the company that will inform your marketing strategy, okay, and ultimately make a choice. And so as they identify these strengths and opportunities, and in doing so, they're identifying these resources, which could essentially be strengths, hopefully, or weaknesses. You're identifying the resources that are unique and valuable to your firm, which essentially becomes your competitive advantage. okay, what your firm does better than other firms. And then by doing so, by unveiling your competitive advantage or your sources of competitive advantage, you're going to take a strategic direction because your SWOT informs your strategic direction. It tells you, okay, are we in a good state where we can leverage our strengths and exploit an opportunity in the market? Or do we need to, fix some of, for instance, with an internal or a turnaround, fix some of our weaknesses that hinder our growth? And so we need to focus on fixing those so we can grow. Or do we need to focus on, mitigating some external threats and focus on, diversification? So ultimately, the SWOT analysis helps a firm really identify what it's doing well, what's propelling its growth, what it's not doing well, what might be hindering its growth, to identify what it does better than others and how it can exploit its resources to inform a strategic direction for the firm. So with that said, and I did want to mention one thing here, I wasn't sure that I mentioned it before. The hearts on this graph are different products. So again, I chose that for Valentine's Day, so you have your sales, your profit, and so in this case, your unbalanced portfolio. All the products are kind of in that more maturity phase, whereas this here, products are spread out, the company's investing in growth, it's diversifying itself, which hopefully will lead to more balanced returns or balanced performance in the long run. Any questions about that before we get started? No? Okay. Well, so today I want to spend some time talking about customers. And next time we meet, we're going to focus more on segmentation and target marketing. And so I want to talk today about how customers make decisions. And why this is important for marketers is because if we know how customers are making decisions, if we know what they're paying attention to, if we know what criteria are relevant to consumers as they select a brand amongst, all the different competitors in the market, we can identify, first off, what our products need to include. What are the criteria? What are the qualities or the features that we need to have in our products so that they're part of the customer's consideration set? And two, we need to communicate those features to our target market. We need to communicate that we have those features and we excel on those features, or we're addressing certain needs. And so we're going to be talking about that today. And we'll get to segmentation and target marketing not next time because we have that guest speaker coming in. So next Monday we have the CEO of Bonnie Plants coming in here. Have any of you met him before? Okay, this will be my first time bringing him into class. I did see him, I had him speak in the fall to a pricing strategy course. So I'm really eager to see what he has to say. But he'll be with us on Monday, and then we'll have class the following Wednesday. Now, I will say I might post a Panopto video to get us up to speed on some content because there are some things I wanted to talk about that aren't in your textbook that might show up on a future case, such as customer journey mapping. So I may post a Panopto video, so stay tuned on that. But we'll see how far we can get. And also just a friendly reminder, you have your mini exam 2 going on right now. Don't forget to take that by Sunday. Yep.
You might have mentioned this, but will you, I know because you got the online class, are you going to have lecture videos while we're out of the country that we need to watch when we come back?
Yes, while you're gone, we'll still have class. Yep. So you should watch those. I don't think anything's due though while you're gone. I tried to be really mindful of that. So hopefully I'm okay on deliverables that week. Yep, any questions? You guys are ready for your trip, huh? Yeah.
So are we gonna have a physical class the week that they're gone?
I'll have to look at the calendar, but I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Because I think there's a decent amount of you still here, right? I think, maybe so. I know some of them are traveling right now for basketball, and my guess is they'll still be here. But we'll figure that out. That's a great question. We'll look at the calendar. Y'all remind me. Someone send me an email and say, Dr. Bach, are we having class the week during the international trip? My gut is telling me that we are, but I don't want to commit to something without 100% confidence. Great question. Okay, so let's get into talking about customers and how we make decisions. So we're going to talk mostly about bullets, maybe get to 3 today, I'm not sure. But we're going to talk about bullets 1 through 3 here. Now, your book really only talks about the cognitive consumer decision-making process. And they use some different words. But we oftentimes as consumers don't put a lot of thought into how we make decisions. Like my grabbing of my cup of coffee this morning, that's like routine, right? I didn't put a lot of thought into it. Now, on the other hand, me planning a trip to Dollywood, I've never been. Have y'all been? Anyone? Is it worth it? Like 6 and 8? Is it an okay?
It's good.
It's good, yeah. So I've heard some really good things, like it's clean, it's closer than Disney World. So I'm gonna maybe plan a trip to Dollywood over Memorial Day, or maybe right after Memorial Day, because I'm thinking Memorial Day is probably gonna be crowded. But I figured that might be a fun way to start the summer off with my kids, because I work all summer, but they'll be in camps. But anyhow, so that thought process that I put into planning a trip is going to be a little bit different than me just grabbing a cup of coffee. And so the book, I feel like, doesn't really talk about how we as consumers use decision shortcuts and decision rules to simplify our decision-making process. And so I wanted to spend some time talking about that today, because marketers look to identify how consumers are making decisions and what criteria they're paying attention to, so that they can align those products with those decision criteria, and also communicate to consumers that, hey, we have that feature and we perform well on that feature. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. Your book describes it as the consumer decision journey. And I first off want to say customers are really difficult to understand, right? We talked about New Year's resolutions. They may say one thing and do another. Yes, I'm going to buy the green product, but then I go to the store and see that Tide's on sale, I'm buying Tide, right? Like, so consumers are very difficult to understand. And when we talk about consumers, though, usually driving their decisions are those needs and wants. So why I chose Tide is because, well, I think it's a highly performing product when it comes to getting stains out. It's also reputable. It's been around for a long time. Okay. I've also tried other brands and I don't think it works. Other brands work as well. But that's just my perception, right? Not everybody has the same perceptions. And so we need to, as marketers, understand these needs and wants to inform our strategic decision-making, or our 4 Ps. And so your book talks about this consumer decision journey, and it talks about 5 stages. Now, I don't want you to think about these stages as always being sequential, because they aren't necessarily sequential, and they're not always in a certain order. And sometimes some of these stages get skipped. Okay, for example, if you're a very loyal consumer to, okay, pick a product.
Coffee.
Huh? Coffee. Okay, do you buy coffee in the store, or where do you?
Store.
Okay. What brand are you buying?
I don't buy coffee.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I buy Nespresso pods.
Okay, Nespresso pods. So for him, maybe the need was triggered, oh, he's running low, right? He's about out of coffee, he needs to go get some pods. He automatically is down here probably, if he's a loyal consumer. Kevin's not considering other brands. He's not searching for information on other brands and how to make the best choice. He's going straight to buying what he's always buying, right? It's very habitual at that point. Whereas other people, and I do again want to say that here you have an initial consideration set, you're evaluating others, you're gathering information. A lot of times these are flipped, okay? It can go both ways, and so I'll talk about this in a minute. But anyhow, for him, he was bypassing some of these stages. And for many of us, we're the same way. Like when I go to, do you ever eat at Johnny Brusco's? Okay. To me, it's really a convenient location. I don't know, I'm like leaning away from frozen pizzas. I feel like there's such a difference between a frozen pizza versus like a freshly made pizza. And they have a little bit thinner crust. And so anyhow, when I'm ordering pizza and I'm like, oh shoot, I gotta feed my kids quickly. It's Friday night or it's after soccer practice and I don't want to be cooking dinner because now it's 7 o'clock. I can quickly order from them. When you're on the app, it's like, do you want to order what you ordered last time? Definitely, yes, please, cheese pizza, and it puts the large cheese pizza in and I'm done, So I'm bypassing some of these stages here, right? I realize I need to feed my kids, I'm buying. So this process laid out in your book says that first there's this need state. Okay, customers recognize they're needing something. They're addressing a problem. They then might know of a particular brand, a couple of brands come to mind. Okay, so I need shampoo, and I'm thinking I automatically know of certain brands that might address my need. That's what an initial consideration set means. Evaluation of alternatives means you're considering and evaluating your different options. How is brand A better than brand B? Okay, for the brands that you're aware of. You then, after knowing of these brands, might go out and do some research, okay? You might search for information to understand differences in products and product performance. On the other hand, though, that's why I said don't get caught up on the order of these things, because sometimes when you develop a need, and let's say it's a new need, something you've never experienced before, you might start evaluating and searching for information first, and then start to evaluate brands, okay? Then ultimately, after you've conducted information, you have a set of brands that you're looking to choose from, you're gonna make a choice, and you choose a particular product. Then you use it and you have post-purchase experiences. Did it work as you thought it would? What is your satisfaction level? How are you using it? Are you going to buy again? Are you going to tell friends about it? These become post-purchase outcomes that marketers care about. Okay? So let's talk about these stages in a little more detail. So stage 1 is problem recognition. Okay? So this can be thought of as a need state where your current state is of a certain level and it doesn't match your ideal state, okay? You want there to be a match. A problem exists when there's a discrepancy. So let's say that you're a teenager and you wake up in the morning and you have pimples, okay? You've noticed like, oh man, my skin doesn't look so good. Your need state has declined. Some people think like, so if this is your ideal state, your need state's now here. You're in a state of need recognition or problem recognition. Another example could be opportunity recognition, where suddenly your ideal state has shifted up, okay? That it's you see a model and, oh, I could look just like her. So it's not that your current state has declined, it's your ideal state has shifted. So let's talk about how these things can be triggered. So typically, if we're talking about your ideal state declining, they're oftentimes due to physical factors, such as health conditions. If we're talking about beauty products, it could be aging. So health conditions, aging. Kevin talking about running out of, the Nespresso pods. So something doesn't work, maybe something broke, maybe your clothes no longer fit, right? There are things that form these needs. On the other hand, opportunity recognition, again, happens when your ideal shifts upward. What might be causing your ideal state to shift upward? This one's kind of tricky. So it could be seeing like a model and thinking, oh, I'm just like her, or I could be just like her. Or it could be things like major life changes. A birth of a child might change what your ideal state looks like. Getting a job, right? Suddenly your income changes. Getting a promotion. So, or having a new set of friends, okay? All of those things can change what you think that ideal state looks like to you. So why this is important to marketers is, one, marketers oftentimes put consumers in a state of problem recognition. They demonstrate how your current state might actually not be so great, okay? And marketers who position their products as a solution to a need are more likely to be chosen by a consumer. So in a consumer context, for example, like I'll tell you, this is embarrassing to admit, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a dermatologist in town who is really good at putting patients in a need state. He once said to me, so I have had skin cancer 3 times. So I have to go in, if you look carefully, I've got scars here, I've got scars here, and so I have to go in for routine checks, okay? And I go in there, and he's telling me how, your skin looks pretty good, but, you could use some filler on your lips and, make your lips look a little, like, bigger, and, you could use some filler here, and I was like, oh, man, okay. Now you're making me feel really good, okay, right? So suddenly, like, I get, it's just triggering this sort of need state where I thought I was here, but now apparently I'm like going down, So definitely creating that discrepancy. And my guess is it probably works really well for them because they sell a lot of different cosmetic treatments and different products at that physician's office. Now, if you look carefully at my lips, you can tell that there is not filler, so it didn't motivate me to do that. I don't know, maybe someday. But anyhow, it definitely, I thought, was a great example of putting customers in a certain need state. Because I will say I have friends who go to that same doctor and have walked out spending nearly $1,000 on product or different treatment plans.
But it's interesting that it works that way because you couldn't have that in a commercial, or something like that. You just can't insult somebody and expect them to buy your products.
But
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure we've seen plenty of commercials that have been talking about, like, you smell, you should buy this.
yeah, they don't say it directly, right? But they say it to mass media, like, oh, you stink, you should use this. Yeah. So, but you do see in commercials, right? A lot of times talking about a certain need state and how the product will address that. Now, in the B2B world, I give these examples in a B2C context, but they also apply in a B2B context, where you might have marketers say things like, okay, your current systems are only doing this, but they could be doing this. Do you understand? Like creating that new ideal state. Or saying like, oh, your system's a little dated. It's not, the language could ultimately lower customers' perceived current state. So it is possible that, these situations are both relevant in B2B and B2C context, because at the end of the day, business buyers have needs, right? And so do we as consumers. So moving on. Different types of needs are out there. Now, these are largely in the B2C context. So one of the broadest classification schemes of consumer needs deals with hedonic and utilitarian. So what we've talked about before is, are people buying for pleasure, for enjoyment, for excitement, for the feeling, the sense of comfort, those more subjective experiential needs, or are they buying for the practical benefits? The functional benefits, which are utilitarian. And products essentially can fulfill both types of needs. I think about gyms. I belong to a gym only because it's part of my neighborhood, but I hardly ever use it. Need to use it more. But I think about running. Do people run because it's good for them, or do they run because of how it makes them feel? Probably both, right? So you've got the how it makes them feel hedonic need versus the practical benefits, the utilitarian benefits too. So uncovering what are the needs that consumers are seeking as they associate themselves with this particular product choice, very important. And then using that in your communications and product design. Other types of needs that are very commonly seen in the marketplace are need for achievement. Largely probably relevant right now for undergraduates or people who are in this program here. Certainly people who have a high need for achievement want to do well, right? They are motivated by success. Okay? And so they'll place a premium oftentimes on products that signal success to others. Another very common need, let me put this one on here before I go on to the next. Who buys this truck? Does anyone in here have this kind of truck? First off, this is not to discredit or make anyone feel bad whatsoever. This was purely a interesting discussion that I had with someone, and so it resulted in me using this truck in examples before. So, why would someone buy that truck? So it's like a massive truck, by the way.
Like a status.
Okay, so he says status.
Signaling. To signal.
Okay, signaling. Would you say power?
Sure.
A sense of control?
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah. So I occasionally will see large trucks on the road. I am such a utilitarian shopper when it comes to vehicles, everyone, just so you know. I think of vehicles as it gets me from here to there, don't really care about the frills. So when I see vehicles like this, and also I'm small frame. I will never forget when one of the car reps said to my husband, who's much taller than me, says, your wife does not need to be driving a full-size vehicle. Look at how small she is. She's going to be so uncomfortable driving that thing. I was like, thank you. So anyhow, because I hate parking big things. I grew up parking in mall parking lots, parking in the Louder lot, parking downtown Auburn. Let me say this. I love just being able to whip in and pull into tight little spaces. Okay, makes me feel good. So anyhow, when I see a large, massive vehicle like this, to me, this person has a very strong need for power. okay? It's this idea of mastery over one's environment, this idea of a sense of control. And so, yes, this truck may relate to this need, but there's also other products and services that relate to this need, like all-inclusive resorts, right? You're getting pampered. You really don't have to do anything. You just show up, and things are brought to you. And so I think that can relate to a sense of power. Some of the tech products you see advertised relate to that need for power. I skipped affiliation. Affiliation, just looking around here, don't really see a lot of it. But oftentimes, if I were teaching an undergraduate class, I might see some sorority clothing or stickers on computers, sometimes some Auburn apparel. Need for affiliation is this idea that you need to have a sense of belonging or connectedness with others. And so many products fulfill this need when it kind of symbolizes that, hey, the customer or this person is part of the group, okay, such as the groups that I talked about. Need for uniqueness. I'm going to say this. I think there is an Olympic figure skater who has a very strong need for uniqueness. I can't claim that it's true or not, but have you guys been watching the Olympics a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what figure skater I'm talking about? It's a female. Which one? Yes. So I think that's her name, right? So why do you think she has a high need for uniqueness?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, why so? Explain to the class. That makes me feel better.
She, well, her whole group does, but her specifically, she has like a striped hair, which is very like vibrant. So she like, it's like brown, blonde, and every single time, I forgot what the time range is, but there's a specific set amount of time, and then she'll add a new row of the color. So she'll add to the stripes, and she also has like bedazzled teeth or something.
Yes, she has jewelry or something
jewelry
on her teeth.
She has jewelry on her teeth.
Child.
And it's just kind of a part of her brand of like uniqueness and like being like loud and expressive. So,
Yeah, she has an incredible story, by the way. I was watching a little clip on her. So I think it's fascinating. I'll pull her.
her teeth, she's literally right there on the thing.
Oh, right here. Look at that. It must have heard us talking about it.
She looks Russian.
Okay, so that's her teeth, but we're not getting good examples of her hair. Oh, right here. Here we go. See her hair? It's striped. Okay, you go over here. Okay, so she's a fabulous skater. Really, really cool story. And so I thought it was relevant to just bring her up right now. I don't know if she won or if it's happening today, but I mean, she really is quite, there she is again. She's all over the place. She's really good. Obviously, all of these Olympians are good. But anyhow, so this need for uniqueness is this idea that we desire sometimes to be distinctive, okay, to distinguish ourselves from others. And so, you know, sometimes you see different companies take advantage of this or relate to this need for uniqueness, such as like creating your own shoes, creating your own jewelry, creating your own clothing. It could be things like you buy a phone case, but then you can make your phone case distinct by putting different stickers or gems or whatever on it. And so oftentimes there is this need for uniqueness that really drives customer behavior. This is just one way of looking at very common consumer needs. There's another classification system called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This was in psychology. Maybe you guys have heard this before. There's been modifications to it. And so originally they felt like it was a hierarchy, but that's not necessarily true because sometimes people will forego food or safety and jump to buying that luxury watch or jump to making other consumption decisions. And so the benefit of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is simply that it illustrates again that customers have a very different set of needs sometimes. And being able to identify the needs that are relevant and link the products to those needs is critical for marketers. So just a couple, obviously physiological are things like food, water, like I think of the Snickers Hungry Why Wait. It's showing how its product fulfills. You know what I mean by when I say hungry why wait? Grab a Snickers. Okay. So they're showing how their product aligns with those physiological needs. Or safety, you're in good hands with Allstate, right? Isn't that what they say? So they're linking their product or service with particular needs. Loving, sensing belonging. I think back to when they had the "You're in the Pepsi generation" tagline. And other taglines too. You can probably think of other examples. Esteem and self-actualization. So esteem needs are like how you feel about yourself. That status we've talked about, right? That you are, you have status and self-actualization. I think the Be All That You Can Be campaign, right? So the most important thing for you to grasp out of this is that there are different types of needs that consumers have, and it's very important for marketers to understand what are the needs operating in our product category and how can our product or offering fulfill those needs. So our initial phase 1 is that we're in this need state. Okay, so we have this difference between our current state and our ideal state. And that's also associated potentially with those other types of needs we just talked about. Now that we have this problem, we might start to look for information to help us solve the problem. So this is where some would say an information search would be. Now, if we're a loyal consumer, we might just bypass this and jump right to purchasing our product right away. So the information search is where we look to gather information to help us make a reasonable purchase decision. Some of us will engage in very little to no information searching whatsoever. Some of us might look for a lot of information. And I question, right now, how many of you are using AI to help with make purchase decisions? Some of you, right? I am. And part of me wonders, how is this going, a large part of me wonders, how are these tools going to change how we as customers make decisions? Like on one hand, it's simplifying the information process and the comparative process. I've started to look at potentially making a vehicle purchase in the next year or so. And I had it compare and contrast 3 different mid-size SUV models, and it was great. So I just questioned how this is going to change how consumers make shopping decisions, and whether or not it will lead us into making more cognitive purchase decisions. Because right now, the majority of our consumption decisions, we don't give a lot of cognitive thought to it, but I kind of wonder if AI is going to change that and make us give more thought. Maybe not, I don't know, but we'll have to see. And so when we talk about information searches, there's different types of information searches. Majority of the time, customers, if they're searching for information, it's because they're about to make a purchase. So it's considered a pre-purchase search. But a few of you might know people who are always staying up to date with certain markets. They're shopping because, or exploring or reading because they like to gather information on certain topics. Anybody want to give an example or know somebody and want to talk about what they're shopping for or looking at?
My girlfriend is always looking at furniture stuff and furniture trends, so she
Okay.
knows when exactly things are gonna go on sale, when exactly, I always joke with her that she would love our marketing class because she's constantly looking at how the market is affecting different like furniture things, and it's like I should wait because this furniture is always in the market, so it's not actually ever gonna go on sale, so I have to make the decision when I wanna buy it versus this one will go on sale, and so I can wait for the price
Yeah.
cycle on this.
And isn't large, like a lot of the furniture coming from China?
That's also the thing where
Yeah.
like some things are coming from China, so this will affect this, other things are being paid here, and this is being here, so
Yeah.
she's constantly.
I'm so mad. I have a sofa and it's a slipcover sofa. Love it. Best thing ever. Literally, you can take apart the whole cover, all of the pieces, wash it, and it looks fabulous. And they don't make, I was gonna get a second slipcover of that pattern. And because of the tariffs and because of changes with materials and things of that sort, they no longer make that same slipcover or that color combination. It was called Matty Glacier. It was the best thing. It was like a combination of grays, maybe a little bit of beige, a little bit of like blue turquoise, but it's very like a neutral, blended with a lot of different colors. But because of competitive and environmental and supply chain issues, they don't do that cover. They do a bunch of other slip covers though. Anyhow, so furniture's one. What else?
Computers.
Computers. You got your automotive gurus who always seem to know what's going on with the automotive industry. You might have, I watch my student workers who seem to be shopping all day for clothes. So, I mean, y'all know what I'm talking about. You've got your fashionistas over here. So those are considered ongoing searches where there's not like an impending purchase, but they're staying up to date with what's going on in that particular industry. Okay, that's an ongoing search. Internal and external searches. So internal searches, that's when we're looking for information that we can recall. So based on our own memory and our own experiences, most searches are going to have some extent of an internal search. Even if we're relatively loyal in that product category, we're going to have an internal search by saying, oh yeah, I have had a great experience with that brand, I'm getting it, right? That's a simplified internal search. An internal search could be things like, oh, I've used it in the past, it's not good, or I've heard my friend talk about it, it's great, or like anything that comes to mind in your memory. Now, most of the time when we talk about what consumers recall, they're not recalling the specifics. So for instance, if you're, let's just say Subaru, and you're advertising that your vehicle gets 37 miles per gallon, are customers going to recall that your product gets 37 miles per gallon, or are they going to recall that it gets good gas mileage? Good gas mileage, right? So customers generally recall more generalized information, okay? So that's an internal search. External search, these are things where we look to outside of ourselves for what information is out there that might help us make a good decision. So you might be looking at different retailers and what their price points are. You might be looking at the different products offered by different retailers. You might be looking at social media, what people are saying on social, who's recommending what. Interpersonal searches are talking with your friends, your family, your coworkers, people around you to see what they've experienced, what they recommend, who they recommend avoiding. An independent search is looking for information from independent agencies such as like Yelp or Consumer Reports, things of that sort. An experiential search, these are searches that involve perhaps using a sample product. Like furniture companies will let you bring, some furniture companies will let you bring products home to see what it looks like in your space before you actually buy it. Some furniture companies will give you swatches of what the leather might look like or the fabric might look like. You could get sample paint colors. Now, even I think with all sorts of advances in technology, if you shop at Ulta, you can pick a lipstick, have a picture of yourself or have your camera pointed at you, and it'll show you what that lipstick looks like on you, okay? So there's many different ways experiential searches work, and we're seeing more of that with increases in technology, which allows consumers to blend their current environment, so to say, with the addition of a particular product. But ultimately what this means is that for a marketer, if we know consumers are searching for information, we need to make the information available. This is a big issue right now facing, are you talking about search engine optimization versus answer engine optimization? A little bit, right? Like companies really haven't been designing the information they have online to fit with how people are asking questions now with AI. And so companies aren't getting their information, because in other words, consumers aren't seeing the information that marketers might want them to see because their systems aren't designed to necessarily respond to AI-based questions. Okay, this is becoming a really important issue with marketers. So from a marketing perspective is we've got to know that people are searching for information, so we need to know what they are searching for, how they're searching, and make sure they're getting that information and that it's available to them. Because what happens if you're looking for information and you can't find what you want? You can't find your answer. What might consumers do?
Just not buy.
They might just not buy. Exactly. They might delay that decision and say, I'm going to hold off. Okay? So information searching, making that information available to the customer is so important. Make it easy for them to obtain. Customers tend to search more for information when they perceive that the product is carrying more risk, okay? And risk essentially is when there's a chance of unknown outcomes that are negative, right? You don't want negative consequences. And so there's different types of risk. There's monetary risk. So this is the idea that you might be out a large sum of money. So products that are very expensive carry monetary risk, or when there's opportunity costs, I could have bought that instead. Okay, so that's monetary risk, pretty self-explanatory. Functional risk, so functional risks, this is the risk that entails when the product doesn't perform as intended. So the product doesn't do what you thought it would do, okay, or hoped it would do. Could be, for instance, that your robot vacuum doesn't vacuum as well as it should. I've had that happen before. It kept wanting to go down the hallway and not vacuum the rest of my living room. Drove me nuts, defeated the purpose of having one. And so that's an example of a functional risk, not performing as intended. A physical type of risk is where the product might actually hurt the consumer. This one seems odd, but it is possible. Like if there's an allergic reaction, if we're talking about a certain food item, or even has latex or plastic or something. Expiration dates, best by dates, things of that sort, right? Could actually make you feel sick. Bad chicken. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you. What else? Oh, interacting with different medications. You know, folks who are on a variety of different medications have to be very careful, especially if they're on Coumadin and some other things, that you have to be very careful about what you take when you're on certain medications. So those are all physical risks. Social risks, this means that the product carries some risk in that you're concerned about how other people might think of you. Okay, we see this a lot in commercials. Kevin was mentioning this before, is that oftentimes you see advertised, ooh, other people think you're not cool by doing this, or other people think you stink, right? So that social risk, what other people think of you, can matter. And actually, I think back to anti-smoking campaigns. You know, cigarette smoking has declined over the years. Now, they do say that with Sabrina Carpenter and some other, have you guys been following that? Like with some celebrities now smoking and doing these things, they think smoking may rise again. But anyhow, so smoking in general, like, has declined over the years. But what the research indicated is that the social argument, the social claim, like, oh, smoking, you're not cool if you smoke, was actually more effective at reducing smoking than telling consumers all of the horrible health consequences or the physical consequences from smoking. Okay, so actually social risk was more impactful than physical risk in mitigating smoking. So psychological risk is how you think of yourself, okay? That sort of guilt you have. So if you're an extreme environmentalist, you care about the environment, and suddenly you're buying products that aren't good for the environment, you might feel guilty or bad about yourself. So psychological risk is kind of those, how your self-views are impacted. And time is also another risk too. You know, how much time does the consumer have to put into learning how to use the product or put it together? I swear, assembly required is probably a parent's worst nightmare. Like, not fun. So time, how much time you're spending learning how to use this or switch to a different contract provider. So ultimately, there's different types of risk, and you got to know as a marketer what risks are relevant to the decision being made by the customer. If we're talking about a B2B experience, most B2B buyers are going to be caring about monetary and functional risk, okay? And potentially time too. Setup costs, switching costs, things of that sort. In the B2C environment, you're going to see more of, well, you'll see all types of risk, but you're likely going to see more of the social psychological, much more so than in the B2B world. But ultimately, marketers need to understand the type of risk that's relevant and know that customers will be looking for information that helps mitigate that risk. After you've searched for information, you might start to consider your alternatives. Now, you sometimes will hear researchers talk about an evoked set. An evoked set are the brands that you're aware of. And this can differ from a consideration set. So an evoked set could be brands that you're aware of and had bad experiences with, you're aware of and you've heard bad things about, and so you're not considering them. Your consideration set are the brands you're actually considering in buying. As a marketer, you need to know, are you in consumers' evoked set? And are you in the consideration set too? Okay, because if you're not, for instance, in the evoked set, that means your customers, what? They don't know about you. They don't know your brand exists, or they don't associate your brand with meeting a particular need. And that's why you oftentimes see marketing research studies or the surveys you participate in ask you what brands do you consider when you're buying XYZ, okay? So as a marketer, you want to know that you're in the evoke set and you want to be in the consideration set too. Again, they're different, okay? Because the consideration set means you're actually looking towards considering this particular product. Now customers are going to make a choice. And like I said earlier, these can be really quick and simple choices, or they can be more complicated and customers can put a lot of thought into their choice set. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about compensatory models here. But what a compensatory model means is that customers are looking at the different features that a product has, the different attributes, and they're looking at these different features across brands, and negative performance on one particular feature can be made up by positive performance on another feature. The simplest way to think about this is that if we're looking at this type of decision making, and we see it's an expensive product, usually higher price means not a good thing, right? A lot of consumers want to save money. So a higher cost may be a negative attribute. But with a compensatory model, we can claim as a marketer that, okay, the price is worth it, that yes, it has a high price, but It's made up by our high quality materials, the longevity of the product, the status of the product, what it means to be a consumer of this particular brand, or the features, that how easy it is or how it simplifies your life. We're showing that these additional features can make up for the high price. Okay. So here are some different models. Now, there are tons of different decision rules that consumer behavior researchers have identified, but here are some common ones. I'm going to show you this one here. Okay. This is an advertisement. Okay. And it's an old one, but it's showing iPhone 5 has these features on the left, and the Samsung Galaxy S3 has all of these features on the right. What is the brand trying to do here?
Show that they have more features.
Showing that they have more features, right? Because the idea is if they have more features, what's the consumer going to do?
Buy
It's good. They're going to buy it, right? More is better. Okay, so they're saying it doesn't take a genius, and so essentially with Samsung you can do this, but with Apple or an iPhone you can do that, right? So the simple additive rule is simply looking at the list of features that a product has and saying and suggesting to the consumer, hey, choose us because we can do essentially a lot more. You get a lot more from us. And so the list of the high performance or the ability to have all of these different features makes up for any sort of negative attribute. So this is in a phone context. It's also oftentimes used in cleaning products. If you guys have ever gone down the cleaning aisle at a store and you picked up, let's just say, a certain all-purpose cleaner, what does it say on that all-purpose cleaner spray? It's good for what? A lot of things, right? It's an all-purpose cleaner. Y'all don't clean your house. Okay. So anyhow, so you look at that bottle and they'll say, oh, good on stainless steel, good on porcelain, good on natural stone. Probably not, but maybe. And so it's good on all of these different appliances. And oh, it works on floors. Oh, it works on wood, right? So it's showing you it's good for so many things, right? That's suggesting consumers to take this simple additive rule approach to making a decision. Another example is the weighted additive rule. So this is a little more complicated. But you'll see this when you're talking about high effort, high risk decisions. Now what I'm about to explain to you, I want you to know that marketers don't think that consumers are actually doing the math in their head. But what marketers are suggesting is that when consumers go to make some purchase decisions, they're looking at different brands' performance on different attributes. And some attributes are more meaningful or more important to customers. So as a marketer, we need to know what attributes are important, how important are the attributes, what matters more than others, and what brands are we being compared to. Kind of like how I drew that or showed that example with the perceptual map with the King's Hawaiian case. Identifying your competitors, and like we talked about brand competitors earlier in one of the chapters, we need to know our main competitors and who consumers perceive us to be like or similar to. So in this multi-attribute model, and it's called, there's different names for it, but it's called the weighted additive rule too. This is an example. And oftentimes, this data will come from survey research where marketers are asking customers to identify the brands that they're considering and then ask them to rate the brand's performance along different attributes. So here, let's say you're looking for a new vehicle, and the attributes that are important to you are price, storage capacity, family orientedness, and style. The higher the importance number here, in this example, indicates that it's more important to the consumer. So in this case, the price is the most important factor. It's the driving factor in making this decision. It has to be, in this case, they care more about price, probably being under a certain price point. And then storage capacity is next in line, family orientedness, and lastly, this person cares about style. Now, then, we're looking at brand performance. So in this case, Yukon's performance on these different factors, Ford's performance on these factors, and Subaru, okay? And so in this case, so you can see my little key down here, these attribute ratings, the higher the better. So in this case, the consumer ranks GMC as performing very well on style and family orientedness, but kind of mediocre on storage capacity and poor on price, okay? It's probably too expensive or outside that participant's price point. Whereas the Ford F-150 must be more of a base model, not a higher end model, but the Ford F-150 was excellent on price, excellent on storage capacity, so they must have like a bed cover or whatever they're called. Okay on family orientedness, and good on style, excellent on style. Okay, you can see the differences for Subaru. So mathematically, a marketing researcher might take this survey data to predict the choice or the brand of vehicle that a customer might buy. And so what they do here is would say, okay, if you look at how I came up with 19, you're taking the importance score times the brand belief score, so 4 times 1, plus 3 times 2, plus 2 times 3, plus 1 times 3. And then we got this to be 19. In this case, the marketing researcher would predict that this customer is going to buy a Ford F-150 because at the end of the day, its performance is strongest on all of the attributes, well, with the exception of family orientedness, but its so-called negative performance on family orientedness compared to GMC and Subaru is made up by its positive performance on these other attributes. Okay, do you follow me here? So that's what makes it compensatory. And so in this case, the high price point for Yukon is made up by these other attributes and the performance on these other attributes. But this consumer, if using a cognitive model of decision making, is probably not going to choose GMC, it's going to choose Ford. Okay? So again, from a marketer's context, no, we are not expecting customers to be doing this sort of math, but we do anticipate that in some contexts, like planning a wedding, buying a home, planning a vacation, those more kind of bigger price points, you might be, yeah, that doesn't sound good out there, does it? For the online group, we're hearing lots of sirens. So anyhow, are we good? Okay, hopefully so. Okay, so anyhow, what this means though is that as a marketer, we need to know, again, what brands we're being compared to, what attributes are important to consumers, and how important are these different attributes, and how do our brands compare across these different attributes, okay? Brand performance is critical. So in uncovering that, what a marketer might want to do is capitalize on your relative advantage. If you know that your brand performs really well on price, okay, so we know price is really important to customers, and we know we do well on it, we want to communicate to consumers in our advertisements and our brand communications is that, hey, look at our pricing options. We fit your budget, or we have these different financing options. And so we want to communicate and capitalize on what we do well. We also might want to strengthen perceived linkages. So let's say you're Subaru and you see that, okay, customers rated us really poorly on storage capacity. And we think we can increase that perception. You know that little roof rack thing, do you see, you know what I'm talking about? I don't know what it is, but it's like a suitcase on top of a Subaru. You guys know what I'm talking about? Yes, no? What's the name? Anyone know the name of that?
Subaru driver right down there.
Okay, what
I don't
is
know the
that
name.
called?
There's two
I don't know
companies.
the name.
The Thule. The company's called Thule.
Thule?
The black box that sits on top,
Okay.
yes. And then
So-
there's the Yakuza.
So Subaru might want to engage in some communications to say, hey, we've got a ton of space in here. Like, look at all of these things that, you know, they might show a vehicle packed full of all of these things, and then using the storage space up top to show how maybe they can actually accommodate more suitcases than some of these other vehicles. Okay? And so you might find in this research that you need to strengthen a certain perception or a certain attribute and performance linkage. You also might want to add a new attribute. You know, you might look at this and say, okay, we maybe want to change how people compare us across this and instead add a new feature that other brands don't have. I'm not an automotive expert, so it's hard for me to think of attributes relevant to the vehicle context here. But an example of this might be when suddenly freshness date stamps were placed on Pepsi cans, where suddenly people started to care about when their soda was manufactured, okay? And so it became, oh, is it fresh? So that was a new attribute that changed how people evaluated products. And then lastly, you might want to influence competitors' rankings. So if you see, for instance, that your competitor is better than you, like if we're looking at GMC versus Ford, and GMC's ranked better on family orientedness, you might want to show as a Ford how actually perhaps you're more family friendly than GMC. And so your brand communications might show a family in the F-150 traveling to some place or doing something family oriented like picking out a Christmas tree. And so show how you actually might be able to be more of a family brand than, you know, in GMC, you probably don't want to put your tree in the back of that vehicle. Maybe. I don't know. Would you?
No.
Okay. I don't know, I'm just thinking, like, would you lift up the back of your GMC, shove the Christmas tree in there, and get it all full of pine needles? No, it's much easier in the bed of the truck. So I'm totally thinking off the top of my head here, but I could see how that might work for them. But ultimately, that sort of competitive identification in terms of what do we need to weaken or what do we need to strengthen comes from understanding these sort of multi-attribute models, or its weighted additive rule, to how consumers make decisions. And so, again, we don't anticipate they're doing math, but we do anticipate that they're weighing their options. They're looking at what do some brands do better than us, or what attributes are important, and how do we compare to other competitors on those attributes. And so marketers can encourage people to take this sort of strategy by it's worth it kind of word choice, you know, to say, okay, yes, our price point's high, but look, we've got these other features that make up for it. Or I know we don't have this, but that's not really important. This is what matters, okay? So I think about going back to, okay, yeah, style, we may not look cool, but safety's what matters, and we've got it. You know, we excel in that space. So you can see that sort of language being used in communication. And placement. Sometimes if we're talking about placement in store, you could put a very expensive, let's just say, sweater next to a cheaper sweater, and looking at it, you can clearly see the difference of why the price point is higher than the other. Okay? And so by strategic placement in store, you certainly can nudge or shift customer decisions in a certain way that encourages a compensatory strategy to say, okay, yeah, it might not have this or it might not be that, but I'm willing to go for it because of its high performance on this other attribute. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to end it here for today. Have a fabulous rest of your week. We'll pick this up next week. And let me know if you have any questions.
I wanna go home, Daniel, I don't. I gotta be. You're there yourself.